Hey, people. I just wanted to say welcome to the first in a new era for comic books in terms of our podcast. It's no longer That Year in Comics. It's now the Pop Culture Comic Pod. That's Pop Culture Comic Pod. I can say that 3 times fast. But I just wanted you guys to know what you're listening to right now. That would be me and Bender talking about any and all things comics, and this is a special episode because, sadly, we lost Stan Lee this past week. So this is our way of both relaunching our comics version of our podcast and paying tribute to the late, great Stan the Man Lee. So I hope you enjoy it. I think Bender and I did this, and then we turned around and did another episode of the Pop Culture Bombcast, episode 154, and both we had a blast. We didn't have any agenda going into it, no real script. It was just he and I shooting the breeze like old time's sake, and I think they were pretty solid episodes. So hopefully you think so too, and I can't wait to hear your feedback. And hashtag Excelsior. Thank you. Hey, and welcome to the We Are Back / first episode of a new era in That Year in Comics, or what was formerly known as That Year in Comics.
Relaunch.
Yeah, if you've listened to any of our podcasts from day one, you'll know that rebranding is not something we're afraid of.
No, and just like the comic book industry.
That's right. We had this is the new 52 for the That Year in Comics or the PC Bombcast. But what we're calling it now is the Pop Culture Comic Pod.
Yep.
And I kind of like that because it keeps it closer to PC Bombcast, like in the initials and all that stuff. And like I'd said on the social medias this week, is that we will still occasionally, probably. It'll be not as frequent as other the normal episodes, but we'll still take 1 year and break them down. I still like that idea because it forces us to deep read stuff.
Yeah, it's fun. And we technically still owe you guys 2,000.
We do, and we'll do that one next. But what this all allows us to do is talk about more stuff, and that's going to be stuff like movies and music, or not music, well, maybe music, but TV, but everything comic related. Yeah. This is not an episode for Missy and the Badger. This is me and you talking about any and all things comics. And we may just do an episode about what we're reading right now sometime. And what I like the idea is, like, we've mentioned it before, and we're kind of going to do it this episode, but not really. This is going to be more of a tribute episode here in a little bit. But it'll allow us, like, let's just, like I mentioned in the thing, we'll go like Warren Ellis. And we'll break down the best with things we think about Warren Ellis. Or we've talked about Next Wave in the past. Yeah. We should just read the whole run and break down that run on an episode. That would be fun.
Or like Rick Remender, for example. I like him a lot, but I don't care for Fear Agent that much.
And I love Fear Agent.
And you do.
So that's a good episode.
Yeah.
Talking about why you don't like it and why I do like it. Now, I will say this. If we do that episode, I promise it won't get as heated as our Star Wars episode. Because I think Star Wars is probably the only thing in life that's going to end our friendship.
Yeah.
Depending on this next film, you may no longer be a host of the show. It just depends on how good it is.
Let me apologize right away for the horse cough. I think it sounds like we're both sort of getting over something.
Yeah, I'm on week 2 of a cold.
Yeah, so am I.
And I missed almost 3 days of work for it.
I didn't miss it. I stayed home with the baby, but this freaking cough I can't get rid of.
Yeah, it's right here, but that's not comic book related.
No, it's not. I just wanted to apologize.
And I tell you what it's not related to. This past week, something probably, and we'll get into that too, but we'll just start now. We lost Stan Lee.
Yeah.
Stanley Martin Lieber, to be exact, known the world over as Stan the Man Lee. Maybe, like I was about to say, might be the most influential passing of a comic creator of all time.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, he's definitely a household name that even your mom would know.
There's arguments to be made for Kane and Schuster and Lieber and all these guys, and even Jack Kirby.
Yeah.
But Lee probably, because more than anyone, became the... Lee did not get... and there's also an argument to be made on his behalf, his estate. He didn't get swept under the rug like a lot of the old 50s and 40s creators. He kind of went forefront and became the face of Marvel throughout the 70s and 80s.
He became a figurehead, and even if he wasn't writing or any of that stuff, he was
Stanleying it up.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to go negative on anything on here, but there's 2 things I want to bring up before we get into all the positives.
Yeah.
One being, I have said on this show that I'm not the biggest Stan Lee fan in the world. And it's not that I did not like Stan Lee, and I want to really make it clear is that I don't discredit any of the contributions he did to comic. I even once, I went on eBay and bought his autograph, and I stood in line to try to get one, and it ended before I got to him.
Yeah.
So trust me, I know how great Stan Lee was. I thought there was a significant amount of time where I thought Stan Lee really, really loved to toot his own horn and really loved to not give credit to the people like Kirby, which they had a massive falling out, and like Ditko, and Ditko hated him. I mean, we haven't even seen a statement from Ditko that I know of.
Yeah,
but so that aside, the other thing I wanted to bring up is before we jump in, I guess we got to get to the asinine thoughts and comments of one Bill Maher if you haven't seen them.
I ignored him yesterday, and I was like, since we're doing this episode, I should probably read his comments. Bill Maher is, for everything that you just said about Stan Lee with tooting your own horn and high on your horse, Bill Maher is that.
He's
the same fucking guy.
He's an extreme left flamethrower. Is what he is. And someone called him a shock jock. I don't agree with that.
No,
I don't think he's a shock jock. But I think what he is and don't get me misconstrued here. It's like 70% of the things Bill Maher says I agree with.
Yeah.
But those 30% that I don't are just unbelievable.
Hard. Yeah, he'll take a hard turn, and you're like, I was with you, but now I'm not at all.
Yeah.
He's when they say liberal elite or whatever, that's him. That's him. That's what he is. He's came up on California, and he's just, if he doesn't like it, it's stupid. It doesn't matter. At all to anybody else.
Yeah, and I think, obviously that's a problem with both sides, and that's neither here nor there. But for this conversation and this episode, I think what's important, or what he said, it's important to know what he said, and essentially, I'm going to paraphrase it all down or sum it all up. He said that Stan Lee allowed men in this day and age eventually to not grow up. That's why Hollywood does all these movies.
Yeah.
And what he contributed to the world is not really that great important, and it's not even really what we call great literature. And I had this conversation with friend of the show, Rick of the Beer Sauce Shop last night. I would argue if you don't think what comic books are literature, I can give you some stuff like Neil Gaiman's Sandman run.
Oh, yeah.
Ed Brubaker's Captain America run. Yeah. Or even like the fact that they brought in historical figures, mythological stuff, and from history, like the Norse gods and stuff. I mean, it's an evolution of the form.
I mean, if he's talking about it like your dad who's never picked up a comic book, and like even if you go, Mike Magnolia's bringing in old folklore with Hellboy, stuff like that.
Celtic
that's very
folklore to gypsy folklore, all kinds of crazy.
It's just another art form, and he just doesn't understand it, and therefore he hated on it, which makes him wrong.
He views it as a Beetle Bailey or Blondie comic strip or Garfield on Sunday paper, which aren't deep, which are fluff. And by the way, art also. Yeah. Those are art also, but they're a lighter art. Yeah. And he even said, I even read comic books. I think that was a lie.
Yeah, I don't think he does.
I think he put that in there because someone said, maybe you should say that you've read or like comic books.
Yeah.
You just don't think there's importance. Stan Lee is important.
Yeah.
His importance we're going to get into here in the next few statements, but it's just real weird of all the things Bill Maher does is to take that stance on a guy like Stan Lee's death.
Yeah, I mean, what he can't even rebuttal from it. He's dead, so you're just being a dick for no reason.
And by the way, he would have been a guy, knowing Stan Lee and knowing, like I said earlier, a guy that liked to toot his own horn through the year. He would have been a guy that would have gladly engaged him.
Oh yeah, it'd have been a fun Twitter battle.
Books. Yeah. And we're also not going to get into the problems that Stan Lee had at the end of with his lawsuit on his nurse and all that stuff.
Yeah,
and thank God for Kevin Smith to try to step in and say, hey, I'm going to take care of anything you need.
Yeah.
Stan Lee amassed a fortune over the years, and unfortunately, in his later years, people tried to take advantage of it.
One of the articles I read was Stan Lee's end of his life was picked over by vultures, basically, between his daughter and all these other people. And it was a shame, but...
And now she's coming out and saying that his daughter and Stan created a character that she's going to release. First off, it's one of two things. Either one, he created a character... Yeah. And it should probably be exposed and released to the world. I don't think she helped. Or two, he didn't create a character, and she's cashing in on his name saying, we created a character.
Yeah.
I don't think it's honest.
Yeah.
I don't think they sat down and he was like, daughter, if there's one thing I want through the years, is to create a comic character with you.
Yeah.
And she was like, yeah, Dad, let's do it. And they come up with something great. I doubt it.
Yeah,
I
no, I
doubt
don't
it.
think. Not from the things I read about her. She kind of sucked.
Also,
so.
on a side note, that started as just a what's the word I'm looking for? An impression.
Yeah.
And it ended strong. That was a good Stan
That was a pretty
Lee
good
at
one.
the end of it,
Yeah, I heard it.
I felt like a mustache and glasses formed on my head. So, but let's
forget the members only jacket.
before we jump into all his creations and some of the fun stuff about him. Anything else you want to say about the Maher and all the stuff for his?
No, I just think he was wrong. Like you said, I think Bill Maher is a talented guy, and I think there he should have stayed in his lane and stuck with his political comedy and let people enjoy
The funny
escapes
books.
from reality as much as they want.
Well, and so, and speaking of the funny books, let's this is going to be a Marvel-centric episode. There's just no way around it because
Hey, he never left.
if you talk about he did do some DC and he did leave. He did.
Did he
leave.
do? I was reading his history and I didn't know that he bounced over to
Stan
DC
Lee,
at all.
well, in the late 90s or 2000, it was Stan Lee Presents, his take on if he created the DC universe.
Oh, see, I didn't see that.
Yeah, and they were
Stan Lee.
but yeah, they were loosely Stan Lee's, I'm sure. But let's talk about what Stan Lee did do.
Yes.
I'm not going to go through the whole list. And one of the things I was going to do, I was almost 3 pages into this episode.
Okay.
And it was going to be like Stan Lee was born in 1920, and he went to the military, and he started as the youngest interim editor-in-chief at Timely. And I was like, you know what? If you want his autobiography, go read a book, go look him up, go Wikipedia. We just want to talk purely comic books and Stan Lee. So, that said, here's what Stan Lee gave us. Spider-Man, X-Men, Iron Man, Thor, the Hulk, my favorite, Fantastic Four, Black Panther, Daredevil, Doc Strange, Ant-Man, and of course, because of Fantastic Four, he gave us arguably the most important bad guy slash obstacle in Galactus and Silver Surfer.
Yeah.
Now I would, and more than that, he did more than that. But I would argue, and I think I'm going to know your answer on this. But of all the things Stan Lee created, is Spider-Man his best accomplishment?
Yeah, absolutely. Spider-Man is my favorite comic book character, hands down.
And I understand why it is. He's not mine. Hulk's mine.
Yeah.
But we lose sight of how important Spider-Man was, especially in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
And even in the 90s when Todd McFarlane started drawing him. But Spider-Man, for the longest time, before the X craze, before the Avengers became a big deal, before Tony Stark became a massive deal, Spider-Man carried that company. And Fantastic Four, the same could be said about Fantastic Four, but a shorter time. Spider-Man, though, that was the jam.
It's because he's easily relatable. Like any kid that's reading it can see himself in Spider-Man in a couple years. Like if I was a dorkier, quieter kid growing up, and you could see yourself in that. Like
now you're a dorkier, louder kid while you're an adult.
Exactly. I don't think I turned out like Peter Parker, but it's something to strive for. But Thor is a god, super strong, and
Thor, and this is not me shitting on him either, but Thor may be the easiest creation considering it was out there.
Yeah, he's already there. But
and Hercules and those guys. But
and Black Panther's a king. Tony Stark is a billionaire. Peter Parker was just a smart kid.
Now he was a super smart kid.
Yeah,
and they do push that, but early on. And I think the reason it was so relatable is because you grew up with Peter, too. He started in high school.
Yeah.
And when they relaunched The Ultimate Spider-Man, they did the modern telling of him maybe even better than the original.
Yeah.
But that was Peter. You saw Peter struggled to pay bills.
Yeah.
He struggled to maintain a job.
Be a good person, like wanting to be selfish and, doing the right thing. It's everything that a teenage kid or young adults go through. And it was with a superhero twist on it.
Outside of, obviously, his catchphrase, Excelsior, was, with great power comes great responsibility, the single greatest comic quote he gave us.
Yeah, I think so.
That's the most recognizable comic book quote in the world. In fact, I think I've seen movies where they don't even give credit. They just say it, and I don't think they realize they're quoting a comic book.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. I mean, it's everything that, like, Peter could have used those powers to be selfish and do whatever he wanted. And he tried. And
it cost him the only male figure in his life at the time.
And he learned that lesson, and that's what Stan Lee did. He gave us a super relatable character that strove for goodness, and you rooted for. And he didn't always win, and he got knocked down, but he always gets back up. And his ability to write a character that no matter the adversity that he's facing, gets back up and takes one more punch is fun.
Well, and that is a theme for him because Daredevil, again, a guy. Now, it was probably Frank Miller that really established the down on his luck hero and the man without
the darkness of the 80s.
But again, normal guy, got knocked down with the blindness and stuff, but found a way to overcome in spite of his disabilities, become a lawyer, pretty important comic book for even Americans with disabilities.
Yeah,
you know?
I watched an interview with Stan Lee a couple years ago where when he first came up with Daredevil, he said that everybody at the studio was like, you can't write a blind character. The blind community's going to like
skew you
and be
crucify you.
Yeah, pissed off about it. And so they workshopped it, and blind people were like, no, that's amazing. And they loved it, and it took off.
And by the way, that was definitely a time when people didn't. They were they were aware of other people's feelings, but always thought it was bad to bring light to their feelings.
Oh, yeah, like they were less than human.
Yeah, nowadays you have to make a blind character. You have to make a female character. You know, there's all these rules that we have to do now. He was pushing for them. Those rules before that was a thing. He was doing it when it was honest.
Yeah.
When I want to do this because it's a good story, not because the blind community needs something.
Yeah,
this is a really great story to tell.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was Daredevil, and then like Black Panther. You know, that's early on, like bringing on Black Panther in a time when that was the 70s. The civil rights movement. It was still in full force, full swing, and he's bringing. There's arguments to be made that an old white guy from New York isn't going to really accurately represent a black community or a black character, but at least he was out there trying.
Well,
and he was letting young black kids see a character that looked like them on print.
We had an episode not too long ago where we referenced, I guess it was, we've done so many episodes.
Yeah.
We're probably closing in on 200 total, almost,
Yeah.
counting all of our spinoffs and stuff. But there was one episode last year when we referenced that series, Robert Kirkman's History of Comics, that was on AMC, and they had one entire episode focused on the African Americans in comic book history, whether it's characters, creators, artists, whatnot, and they talked about that. They talked about Black Panther and being a big deal because even Luke Cage, when he started, he was kind of dressed like a pimp.
Oh yeah, he looked like a disco guy.
And all black heroes were like that, and they didn't think they could make a hero that was just a hero and important. And in a way, it's kind of sad that he had to make him from another fictional country, that he couldn't have done it. But I think that was Stan Lee saying, I'm going to create this guy, and I'm going to force him on you.
Yeah.
But I'll do what I can to make it acceptable. But, and man, Black Panther was around for a long time, and always a good character, always a powerful character, but really in the last few years, it's a good thing Stan lived long enough to see Black Panther get its due.
Yeah.
Arguably one of the better, I think it's overrated, but arguably, critic-wise, one of the best-rated Marvel movies made.
Yeah, it's a very solid film.
And more than that, Wakanda may be the best setting in the Marvel universe.
Yeah. It's definitely the best. Yeah, Wachovia and what's the other one? Are pretty shitty.
Wachovia, and then, you know what we haven't seen that I want to see? I want to see the Savage Land.
Oh, yeah, that'd be cool.
I want to see.
Maybe if they cross over and they finally bring the X-Men in. But speaking of X-Men, that was a representation of, like...
minorities.
And...
Again, teenagers.
Yeah.
Probably disenfranchised youth.
Yeah.
Which in the 60s was a big deal.
It was coded for, racial inequalities and stuff. It was... a way
it was
to...
definitely racism was prevalent in that book. Fear and racism was a big deal.
And then when Bryan Singer, say what you want about him now, but when he came out with the first two X-Men movies were basically a metaphor for gay rights.
And the second one in general, people, I think, because of how many movies we've had since then, people forget how X2 was...
Yeah, it was great.
Pretty fucking good movie.
Yeah,
5.5 out of our 6-pack scale.
Now, and that's the thing, like, was Stan Lee in the X-Men movies? I haven't gone back. There's a clip. Somebody put a clip on YouTube of all of his cameos.
And we'll talk about his cameos in a little bit. But I can't remember in the first one, but I know for sure the third one when they go back to Jean.
I do remember him being in the third one. But I don't remember the first two him being in.
We'll have to look that up.
Yeah,
we'll have to cite
I'm curious.
that.
But I was just wondering because he was in everything, and then
you know what? Side note too, or another topic. of course he did all this great thing with teenagers and stuff because he had that. I mean, that was a lot. And then he had the blind guy, but he tackled alcoholism.
Yeah.
Tony
Stark, yeah.
I mean, probably the most flawed hero that he created outside of some might argue Hulk. But that was, but Stark, I mean, Hulk was a force of nature. And even though it was Banner's fears and his inadequacies.
It's just raw energy.
Yeah, but Tony was more flawed, I argue, than Banner.
Yeah.
Because Banner, even though he had the Hulk inside him, he essentially was created by selflessly sacrificing.
Yeah. Tony
just couldn't deal with his shit from the war.
Yeah.
And went to the bottle.
Yeah.
Demon in the Bottle, maybe one of the great runs of all time.
Yeah, it's... When I first saw that,
and I don't believe he wrote that.
No, I don't think he did either. But that's the other thing that say what you want about, like you just said earlier about Frank Miller having one of the better runs on Daredevil, and I think I'm blanking on Scott Smith. Who's writing Spider-Man right now? Is it Scott Smith?
It's Scott Snyder.
No, it's not
Scott
Snyder.
Not Snyder. Yeah,
I'm blanking on it right now. I'll pull it up, but. Whether or not,
and you love the current Spider-Man.
Oh, I do. I really do. But what I'm saying is, like, all these characters that Stan Lee created, maybe he didn't write the best stories of them, but he has allowed so many artists and so many writers to come out and make names for themselves. And
especially when he was in charge, when he was EIC, he definitely allowed people to do. Speaking like we talked about Fantastic Four, how important they were. It's still probably the Galactus trilogy is probably going to go around one of the 5 or 6 most important stories in the history of comics.
Yeah.
I mean, he created, there was all these street-level heroes they had. Even though the X-Men, Magneto is a world threat, obviously, he was still it was very isolated to the X universe. All of Spider-Man's villains are very isolated to New York. Then he was like, well, Fantastic Four are adventurers, but let's give their threat the greatest threat the world's ever known. A guy that came to literally devour the planet.
To eat the planet.
And a guy so powerful that the envoy he sends ahead is probably the most powerful character on the planet when he gets there, and Silver Surfer. And then to have the Surfer turn on him because he finds love and humanity and it reminds him of his home. I mean, that's a deep story.
Yeah, it is.
That's deep.
Yeah. And that's, I think when I first learned about, I was reading comics, but I didn't really realize who Stan Lee was until Mallrats, probably.
Well, and I don't want to talk about that anymore because we're going to get to Mallrats later.
Okay,
and see what you were saying about that is we always joke I'm a little older.
Yeah,
I remember when they were still airing Spider-Man and Friends. I was young. I was cognitive enough and that is more than anything. To me, is Stan Lee.
Yeah,
he's like good morning, true believers.
His narration.
Then his narration, and so you didn't have that.
No, I didn't.
And so Stan Lee. So I just assumed when I was a kid, I didn't even know what he looked like really outside of that. Yeah. And I was just really getting into comics, and Superman was my jam. So I was like, I don't know what Stan Lee is, but he's obviously important.
Yeah, and that's what when I was just bringing up the Mallrats thing, and that's why I've always been more of a Marvel guy. Is that the characters feel more realistic and more relatable.
Well, grounded in reality is a cliche.
And, I mean, everybody understands Batman and he's brooding and this and that, and I never was a Superman guy because of the reason that he's just so insanely powerful and so, unstoppable that there's just nothing to really relate there. And Spider-Man and Daredevil, the X-Men, there's something there for everybody that you can pull out a part of yourself out of that, or find a part of yourself in that character. And Stan Lee brought that to the table, and I don't think when I was coming up and loving comic books, and I could be wrong, and there's an argument to be made on the DC side that I just didn't find that in any of the DC characters.
And one of the reasons I don't think you did is because, and even for me, as a guy that really I lived in Southeast Missouri, and I had access to, seems like civilization was hours away from me because I had a mom that worked evening at bars. I had a dad that was, had his own demons to deal with. So I was home a lot by myself. So the way I dealt with it was asking my mom to pick me up comic books. Or my aunt worked at 7-Eleven, later Quick Pantry. And for those that don't know, newsstand comics are, the covers are tore off and sent back, and they shred all the comics at the end of their run. So they don't just linger on the shelf, and they get credit for what doesn't sell. So instead of doing that, she would just give them all to me. And
that's cool.
So I was reading, the good thing about it, I was exposed to all kinds of different comics. The bad thing is I never got a cohesive story told.
Yeah, I know. I hated that.
But even that, I never got into Teen Titans when Teen Titans was probably X-Men before there was X-Men.
Yeah.
And that was DC's effort. They're countering to the X-Men and their
I never really thought about that. Yeah, you're
their
right.
way to make and one of the better early DC Marvel crossovers was Teen Titans X-Men.
Yeah.
It's drawn. I'm blanking on who drew it. It was someone great like Neil Adams or something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head who it was, but a very good comic book. But it was so DC created the comic book or the superheroes their genre.
Yes.
They just did.
Yeah.
I mean, it was there, but it was Superman and Batman that really kickstarted it.
Yeah.
And they were the biggest players in the game for a long, long time. And they're arguably still, Warner Brothers owns them, and they're, but they're a big deal still.
Yeah, no, they are.
But everything from about the late 70s, maybe even the 60s on, has been reactionary to what Marvel was doing. Now, there were some blips here and there where Frank Miller wrote Batman, and it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And there's an argument to be made about like the most important comics of all time, Dark Knight Returns, Watchmen, things like that. DC's always done that better.
Yeah.
But at just pure superhero comic books, for my lifetime, it's always seemed that DC is trying to play catch up to Marvel.
Yeah.
And Stan Lee has a big reason to do that because it's his characters.
Yeah.
They were designed so great.
Yeah.
You don't have to fuck with them. You don't have to keep redoing their backgrounds and redoing their shit. You just, and to what you said about being grounded in reality, and we've talked for 15 minutes now about his characters, and I haven't mentioned my favorite of all time, one other time, Hulk, which was Jekyll and Hyde, or Frankenstein's monster, or whatever you want to call it. He and Hulk. One of my favorite anecdotes about Hulk is Hulk saw really great sales on East Coast and West Coast not because those people just bought it, but because distributors would not send as many copies to the Midwest. Because Hulk was created by essentially nuclear warfare, and they were afraid Midwesterners would be scared of that. So they did not send as many copies there.
Man, coastal elites.
Well, and just what a different world.
Yeah, it's weird.
I mean, like, and, it
yeah, because wasn't it created in like he was created in like a testing facility in a field or
testing
whatever.
the gamma bomb.
Yeah.
And Rick Jones was out there on a dare, and Bruce saw it and had to run out and pushed him in the ditch and took the full brunt of the gamma radiation and created the Hulk.
And I think the other thing that helps is the fact that I think the thing that Marvel's done better than DC is that they based everything in a real city, which is New York City.
I mean, in fact, it was so to the point where you would assume because of the way the world created that you couldn't literally turn a corner without getting stomped by a bad guy or shot by an optic blast.
Yeah, for example, I'm playing that Spider-Man game
I still need to get it. In fact,
on PlayStation. It's spectacular.
You want to hear? This is my one tangential bitch about this whole thing. Target. Favorite store to shop at. Great for Christmas. Had buy two, get one free. And I will say this since my kids aren't in the house.
Yeah.
Santa got 2 games. Well, every year I get the 3rd game.
Yeah, that's fair.
Spider-Man was not available.
Not being
sold out. Sold out. And I was like, you son of a bitch. So I went Diablo 3, which is one of my favorite series of all time.
Yeah, nice.
And a special edition of it. But that was I was like, I'm getting Spider-Man. Yeah. This is how it's going to go down.
But it's so much fun. I'm playing it right now. And I went to New York last year. So, when you're swinging around the city...
Can I ask you, when you were walking around New York, were you constantly looking up saying, Spider-Man can swing off that? Spider-Man can swing off this?
Yeah, because the buildings are so fucking big.
Where would Freedom Towers be if it was really here?
But, I'm swinging around the city in the game, and I'm like, I've been there. And it's cool to, I can't imagine if I were to grow up in New York City and love comic books like I do. I think it would have been even cooler. So I really wanted to go to Hell's Kitchen when I was there.
I think had you and I been born in New York, let's assume we were friends. We were born, and we don't even have to be closer in age. We just grew up on the same block.
Yeah.
Had we grown up in New York and comic books would have been our jam like they were here, I think we'd have been in comic book industry.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because
it would
you're
have
there.
What you strove for.
Yeah, you're there.
Yeah.
And more importantly, because you were there, and the magic that is your imagination is overflowing because Marvel's HQ, and
it's awesome. And like a superhero like Spider-Man, for example, going back again to my favorite character, he really doesn't work in almost any other city in the United States. Maybe Chicago, but
he's not like Superman. He can't get anywhere else.
Like nowhere else. No other city except for New York and Chicago have that many gigantic buildings, and like his powers are his main thing is swinging around the city. Like you swing around downtown St. Louis, you're going to get 6 blocks off the or 6 stories off the ground.
How many stories can you tell where he swings from the middle of the arc? You know what I mean?
But like how many helicopters is he catching in that thing?
That's right. I will say this too. Spider-Man talking about it. Even though he's not my favorite, Hulk's my favorite.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, Superman was favorite. When I dream, and this is a legitimate thing, when I dream at night, sometimes throughout my life, and when I'm walking around, I don't think of flying like Superman or picking up things like Hulk. I always imagine swinging like Spider-Man.
Because it looks fun.
Anytime you've ever, and for us Midwesterners who ever go swimming in creeks and rivers, anytime you rope swing, if you're Spider-Man.
Yeah, you feel like when you let go and that pause in the air, it's fun.
The only thing that is hard to swallow for me when it comes to Spider-Man, and this is really pertains to the Eric Larson era, one of my favorite artists of all time. With that radioactive bite, apparently Spider-Man got the most articulate joints in the world.
Oh yeah.
he can pose like no other.
Oh yeah.
He's Spider-Man. He poses the greatest.
So same thing. I've been practicing for that run, and since it's cold out, I bought the the wicking like skin tight running pants and the shirt, and I put it on. I'm like,
I'm a superhero.
Man, Spider-Man can not eat a sandwich because everything just fucking hangs out.
You instantly tried to come up with your superhero name.
Oh yeah, I'm like standing there. I'm like, man, I look like
not as
a
cool.
slightly chubby Spider-Man.
Well, if Spider-Man stopped saving lives,
if he drank 30 beers a week and ate sandwiches.
This is not a Spider-Man centric episode, but it does seem like that right now because Stan Lee was so. I mean, I knew it was your favorite.
Yeah.
I do think it's his best creation.
Yeah, it's still. I think historically for Marvel, it's their number one most profitable license, I believe.
In a world that we are in now, where the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which can be directly attributed to Stan, is probably the most successful run of a studio in the history of movies. I mean, you could probably find if you adjust for inflation. You could probably, when there was only 3 studios and no TV, there's probably Gone with the Wind and whatever movies.
Yeah.
But in the modern era, with all the outlets we have, the fact that these things are printing billions of dollars.
Yeah. I mean, home run after home run.
Yeah. So that said, and again, not Stan's creation, but you could directly draw a line saying if it wasn't for Stan, we'd have it. I don't know that I've ever been more excited for a movie than Into the Spider-Verse.
Oh, yeah, I know.
I'm just so pumped.
Dude.
Miles Morales is, I think, outside of the black costume and then later Venom, I think Miles Morales is my next favorite thing to come from the Spider-Man.
I was reading Spider-Gwen as well. I think it's a great spin-off. I was not on board with this when they first.
My favorite new costume is Spider. I even did a cool drawing, a black and white negative space drawing with it. That's one of my favorite costumes of all time.
And then they have Spider-Pig, which I was not into whatever comic that came out of.
Yeah, but that was all a fun thing throughout the 80s.
But John Mulaney's voicing him, so I'm all in because I fucking love John Mulaney.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited.
Yeah,
I'm very excited.
I am too.
So before we go to the cameos, you pulled up something, and I want to know what you're going to go with. Where you're going to go with that?
Oh, the one thing that we kind of hit on it a little bit back before, but this thing kept popping up on Snopes and Fact Check or whatever, and Stan Lee's condemnation of bigotry and racism, and it was his little soapbox, and I thought it was an amazing read, and that
came from Marr. People sent that out as a rebuttal to what Marr was said, how it wasn't important.
Yeah,
and you mentioned that, and I'll take off from there. Where another thing,
I just wanted to read it, because in today's day and age, especially where everything's so partisan and so angry,
so polarizing, opposite.
Like a guy like Stan Lee is important because he did create comic books for kids, but he also had a good message, and this was a soapbox, and it ran for several years in the back of every comic. It says, let's lay it right on the line, and I I can't say it like him, but I hear it in my head when it's his voice.
His voice was so distinct.
Yeah, let's lay it right on the line. Bigotry and racism are among the deadliest social ills plaguing the world today. But unlike a team of costume supervillains that can't be halted with a punch in the snoot or a zap from a ray gun, the only way to destroy them is to expose them, to reveal them for the insidious evils they really are. The bigot is an unreasoning hater, one who hates blindly, fanatically, indiscriminately. If his hang-up is black men, he hates all black men. If redheads once offended him, he hates all redheads. If someone foreign beats him to a job, he's down on all foreigners. He hates people he's never seen, people he's never known, with equal intensity, with equal venom. Now, we are not trying to say it is unreasonable for one human being to bug another, but although anyone has the right to dislike another individual, it is totally irrational, patently insane to condemn an entire race, to despise an entire nation, to vilify an entire religion. Sooner or later, we must learn to judge each other on our own merits. Sooner or later, if man is ever to be worthy of his destiny, we must fill our hearts with tolerance for them. For then and only then we will truly be worthy of the concept that man was created in the image of God, a God who calls us all his children. And this is an old man. He died at 95.
That was from the 72.
Somewhere at 72 to 73. This is an old man who dies at 95, and there's a lot of people that it was a different time then and people were just more racist, and that's not like that anymore. Like, he's an old man who was pushing an equality message forever, and people might have their hang-ups or what he did professionally and maybe took credit for things where he shouldn't have, but his message was a strong, happy message that people should be the best that they can be, and that's what I think he should be remembered for.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm not drunk.
Yeah.
But that's almost
it's a great read. When I pulled it up and it was on Snopes and I read it, I'm like, man, that is fucking moving, and that's words that everyone should strive to live by.
It makes me, as a guy that was very skeptical of him when he was alive, especially, let's go back 15 years ago was when my beef came with him.
Yeah.
And it makes me appreciate, really, really sad, and more now than I was before we started this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. It's terrible, but I mean...
Hey,
that's what he's leaving in the world.
Anyone that ever gets into the 90s is going to wither away, so to speak, without hitting them a little bluntly. But we got Stan for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And speaking of getting him for a long time, let's segue into his cameos. Let's upbeat it a little bit. Talk about. I wanted to do this last, but I'll do it first because you brought it up all ago. But my favorite cameo of his. Yeah. Is Mallrats.
Oh, I love Mallrats.
And that's before it was a cameo.
I know you're disagreeing with me, but that's my favorite Kevin Smith movie.
I'm not. I'd never disagree with you. I will say it's not my favorite.
No, yeah. But that's what I meant. We differ.
You're talking about a guy and me that wholeheartedly dives in head first to all things Kevin Smith. Saying Mallrats is his best movie is like saying pepperoni pizza is better than Meat Lover's pizza. Yeah. Who gives a fuck?
Yeah, they're both pizza. It's good.
Yeah, but that is definitely it. And he, like you referenced, there was that video that people have put out, all of his cameos and stuff. And there's some good ones. And I want to talk about what you think of his good ones. But I did want to start with I wanted to finish because it's my favorite. Yeah. And it was the one where he had lines.
Oh, yeah. Like, it just... Jason Biggs, right?
No. Jason Lee.
Jason Lee,
Former pro skateboarder turned comedic actor.
Just
Thank you, Kevin Smith.
Asking him the questions, like, about, like, sexual stuff, things, dick and everything. Oh, my God. It's Stan Lee
part of Mr. Fantastic Stretch?
Yeah, just fucking looking him straight face and answering questions is just timeless as hell.
In that same voice that I referenced from the early 80s.
Yeah, and his Letterman, or his members-only jacket.
Yeah.
I still see the scene. He's like in a yellow members-only jacket standing at the top of the mall.
I don't know about all that. That's the best.
We need to get this guy some help.
That's the best. Yeah, he's really obsessed with superhero dicks.
Oh man!
And that happened because Kevin Smith, who arguably out of the '90s, I think it's Kevin Smith, Robert Rodriguez, and Quentin Tarantino became the biggest influencers in pop culture from Hollywood side. it's you could argue. I mean, you could say that all happened, and because Kevin Smith was so in love with Stan Lee,
because Kevin Smith's a huge dork,
and he put him in that movie, and that is in a movie that's hands down one of I think the funniest movies ever made. And I love, it's not my favorite Kevin Smith movie, but it is raw comedy. It's also a movie that captured 80s things in the 90s, like showing a girl's breasts, like stupid humor, slapstick stuff.
Yeah, going to the mall. Like, kids don't go to the mall anymore.
It even jumped on top of some Warner Brothers stuff in the Wile E. Coyote stuff. And all. I mean, it's a great movie, and a movie that's great from pillar to post.
Yeah,
it's even better because Stan Lee was.
Yeah, it takes this like little jut off to the side where Stan Lee just happens to be in this mall, and it's an unnecessary scene. Like, had they cut it, I don't think anybody would have it wouldn't have lost anything in the movie, but that it's there makes the movie so much better.
Well, and what's it's probably what's unbelievable of all the things in the movie that I will buy.
Yeah.
The only thing that I won't buy is that Brody's character didn't know Stan Lee was coming to the mall.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
If he
for
goes
sure.
to a mall, everyone knows it.
Yeah. And with the amount of boxes he had downstairs of comic books, you know that fucking guy. Yeah.
Real quick, the last thing I'll say on the Mallrats part of it before we talk about his other cameos is I once used social media. Like, I once announced a breakup on social media using a line from Mallrats.
Oh, really?
I said, I too am in the framing business. And because Brody, when he breaks up with, I can't think of her name, but
I know you're talking
Shannon
about.
Doherty's character,
Mm-hmm.
she gives him a letter and he frames it and he gives it to what was the kid's name? The twins that were in the movie. The one that was in the movie. I can't remember his name, his actor in real life. But when he gives it to him, he sees it and he goes, "So what are you doing here today?" He goes, "Well, I'm afraid to announce that I too am in the framing business," meaning his girlfriend broke up with him. So I once used that to announce on social media that me and a girl had broken up. And only one of my best friends, Matt Howard, Pal, he
was the only one who caught on.
He texts me, he goes, "You guys aren't dating anymore?" To which I responded, "I fucking love you."
Yeah, that's fucking great.
But what about his other cameos? Of all of them, in all the movies, the Marvel movies, what are your favorites?
My favorites are Thor Ragnarok, where he's a little old guy cutting hair.
Real quick, Jeremy London.
That
was
you got his name?
Not London. Yeah, Jeremy London, him and his brother.
Okay.
The other one was in Dazed and Confused. He was the other London brother. I can't remember his name.
I know what you're talking about.
They
were
twins. One of them's a
I didn't know they
trainer.
were twins.
Yeah.
I thought they were the same guy.
They're not. Nope.
Huh.
And one of them is a train wreck. And
I think it's the guy that was in Mallrats as a train wreck.
Yeah, it could be. But anyway,
I really liked his cameo in. I just watched Ant-Man and Wasp. His was pretty good.
I have not seen it yet.
Oh, it's solid. It's very solid. But Thor Ragnarok was funny, and my hands down favorite I think is, and it's not the best Spider-Man movie at all, but it was the Amazing Spider-Man. The library scene where he's just listening to music and Peter Parker's fighting in the background. I thought that was extremely well done. Yeah,
Jeremy
those two
and
guys.
Jason London.
I thought they were the same fucking guy.
Not
I had no idea.
But I just showed him a picture for those that didn't know of it. Yeah,
one's significantly taller than the other.
Yeah, that's a good one. That is a good one too. My favorite, maybe, as a strip club DJ in Deadpool.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I just watched that. Yeah.
And the reason I love it the most is I think Deadpool's one of the most criminally underrated as far as the Marvel movies go. And I don't mean that. I mean, it made $1 million or $1 billion.
Yeah.
It's one of the best. But I think in terms of the Marvel Universe pantheon, because it's not officially under a Marvel studio, the fact that it is so raunchy that he still was in it, that makes me so happy.
Again, going back to Mallrats, I think he had like a raunchier side that you didn't really. I think he was just fine with that stuff.
He knew for marketing purposes, let's just keep that under the DL, and every once in a while we'll show it.
Yeah. Like, he's allowed to be an adult every once in a while, and
everyone's allowed to be an adult.
When he'd show up in Big Bang Theory, I think he always did a great job with Sheldon Cooper in Big Bang Theory.
Yeah, he had a restraining order that made Sheldon happy. I also dug his, which one was it? Was it Ragnarok? Which one was it?
Ragnarok, where he's the barber.
He's the barber in that.
Yeah, when he's like, please don't cut my hair.
Which one was it? Was it Guardians, where he was, Guardians 2, where he was on the planet talking to the Watchers and they walk off?
Yeah,
that was a good one.
Guardians 2 when they're flying through and he's...
And that one's funny because everybody, I don't think any Marvel director or writer thought this is what they wanted to do with him, but the Marvel fans, movie fans, were like, well, he's a watcher. That's why he's in every one of these. That's the best explanation of why he's in every movie.
I didn't read the whole article, but apparently what kicked it off with Sam Raimi or whatever in Spider-Man, they had to talk him into that. Sam Raimi didn't want him in. He didn't want him in there.
Also, by the way, Sam Raimi, another one of those guys from the late 80s, 90s, greatest directors. Yeah. And we talked about how the X franchise, the first two, were very underrated because someone did the third
Brian
one
Singer,
and what's his name took over the third one and
Brett Ratner.
Yeah, and just destroyed it.
Yeah.
Spider-Man 1, great. Spider-Man 2, one of your favorite movies ever made. And a great movie.
Yeah, it is.
And Sam Raimi.
Yeah, and the third one had the studio according to what he says, had the studio allowed him to do what he wanted, would have probably been better.
In my
probably
opinion,
wouldn't have been a dance scene.
Because of the Ash and the Evil Dead franchise, and because of movies like Big Fish, or not Big Fish, but of all the movies that Sam Raimi's directed, I believe him.
Yeah,
he has enough credibility in my world that I believe him.
Yeah, for sure. I even like his Drag Me to Hell, which I don't think got as much credit as it deserved,
movie.
But it was great.
Movie. Yeah, the great thing about that film is it skirts the line of PG and R and stayed PG-13.
Yeah.
But the way PG-13 movies get it is they really hamp up the not the jump scares, but they do a better job of the creepy factor.
Yeah.
And
scary old ladies
Annabelle
or whatever. Yeah.
But that was that was as close to a straight horror movie that a PG-13 movie could ever get, and it was great. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was a great movie.
Yeah. But anyway, Spider-Man 2, Amazing Spider-Man 2, all of his cameos, awesome.
Yeah. One thing about Spider-Man 3, the other problem with Spider-Man 3 is Topher Grace was never Venom. He wasn't big enough.
No. What Topher Grace was probably a miscasted Peter Parker.
Yeah.
Topher Grace is an amazing actor.
He is a great actor, but Venom's big.
Topher Grace is also in one of our favorite films, the bad guy in it, the real bad guy in it, and Predators.
Yeah.
Robert Rodriguez is Predators.
Yeah, no, Topher Grace is a great actor. He's not Venom.
He would have been,
or Eddie Brock.
When he got into Hollywood, had they not already had Tobey Maguire, he would have been the perfect cast for Peter Parker.
Oh yeah, I agree entirely.
Because he's so quirky. He's good with one-lines.
Skinny, nerdy guy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, who got pretty fit.
Looks like Peter Parker.
Yeah, exactly.
Looks like Peter Parker. Yeah.
Either way.
Yeah. So the cameos, there was even a point in my life where the cameos, I was like, okay, enough with the cameos.
Yeah.
And again, but then every once in a while, Deadpool would come along and go, okay, fun cameo.
His little one, I don't know if it was a little more fun because he passed away, and I watched the movie after he passed away, but his one in Ant-Man and Wasp is pretty solid.
I need to watch it. I haven't watched it yet.
It's very
I'll probably
small.
Get it soon.
Yeah. It's a good one, though.
Yeah, and maybe when I watch it, we come back on and talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
Because someone told me that Ant-Man and Wasp recently, a guy I respect his opinion in terms of comic books, said he liked it even more than the first one.
I don't know. We'll talk about it after you watch it.
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
But Paul Rudd is a national treasure, I'm just saying.
Yeah. Isn't it crazy to you thinking about that Paul Rudd is a cast member of Friends?
You know, it took a while for me to remember that.
And I know there was a lot of peripheral characters, but he was very important because he ends up marrying Phoebe, and it was 3 seasons.
I didn't realize he was on. I thought it was 1 season, and he's a scene stealer. If you go back and watch those episodes, he's a scene stealer.
And he's one of those guys too. He's like Jason Bateman, a little bit of Bill Murray in him. Where they're kind of the same guy in all the films. But that guy's perfect.
Yeah, quirky,
whatever
nice guy.
Whatever you put him in, that guy's perfect.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So anyway, so the cameos obviously for the newer generation, these millennials in this world, cameos probably are what they know Stan Lee for the most.
Yeah.
But there would be no cameos, there'd be no Marvel Cinematic Universe, there'd be no Miles Morales, there'd be none of those things if there wasn't a Stan Lee.
Yeah.
And because we got a Stan Lee, we got to do all those things. So let's some other notes I had before we wrap up. And by the way, if we didn't say this before, just like we've said with That Year in Comic, we always want to do close to an hour or over on Pop Culture Bombcast. There's no time restriction on this. There's no time earlier. Yeah. If we go 25, 30 minutes, we'll do that. If we go an hour and 10, we'll do that. But we'll go ahead and bring this to a station because I feel like we accomplished what we wanted to.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the world is slightly darker place without him.
Yeah. The world should mourn Stan Lee, regardless of what Bill Maher says. But one of the things I want to bring up is there was even a Stan Lee in D.C. before he actually went over and did some stuff. When him and Kirby had their falling out, and Kirby was created the New Gods and did Mr. Miracle, he created a character called Funky Flashman. Okay. And it was a parody of Stan Lee, and it was Kirby's way of taking a shot at Stan Lee.
Digging.
Yeah, but you don't get that if you weren't important.
Yeah, exactly.
So he made it into two universes, whether people want to admit it or not. He's there. Yeah. Also, I feel like we should mention that his name came up in the Pulitzer Prize-winning book of 2001 by Michael Chabon, Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay, which were loosely based on Schuster and Siegel, Superman's creators.
Okay.
But I want to say it's an amazing book. I've tried reading it 3 times in life, but I can't get through it.
Really?
But it won because it's too smart for me. Maybe that's it.
Yeah,
but
too highbrow.
He was a prominent part of that because it was based in New York and a couple of Jewish writers, and he's in it, so that's a big deal. We mentioned all of his cameos and video games and everything he's been in. It's just there's not one person in the history of comics that has made an impact across every platform that we enjoy than Stan Lee. He's the only one.
Absolutely.
He's it. That's the list.
Video games, movies, music, all of it. He's touched it all, and he's, like I said, even your parents look for him in the movies when you see him. If they've never picked up a comic book, they know that guy that's in every single one, and they're looking for his cameo. Like, no, I don't know if we're ever going to have that again in this industry, and good for him. Like, he earned it.
Yeah, well, we're gonna bring the train into station, but I'll say this: there's an Incredible Hulk over there that's got a Stan Lee autograph that I fucking slaved up until 1:00 in the morning on eBay to get, back when eBay was the way to get things. Yeah. And because I had to have a Stan Lee autograph, even if I didn't necessarily agree with everything the man said. Yeah. You and I do a lot of episodes of this stuff, and you more than anybody has always labored over his sign-off on these episodes. Yeah. But I don't think there's any way to sign off with this episode other than Excelsior.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you know what? Keep reading comics. Everybody. Closing thoughts, Bender, on Stan Lee.
No, I just said him there. He's the world is a darker place without him. But his legacy will live on for generations.
But for 41 years of my life, and how old are you now?
34.
And you've had him. We had him for every bit of our life, the majority of our lives, definitely 100% of our lives so far up until recently. So definitely keep reading comics, keep honoring Stan Lee, and Excelsior.
Excelsior.
That's it.